Welcome back to the channel, you bunch of beautiful people. You join me, the beard, and you join he, the chef, and you both join us. And together, in unity, we are going to discuss the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Yeah.
Yes, the Adeptus Mechanicus. A topic of many conflicting questions and opinions and thoughts, and yes, they're a hot topic right now.
Yes, and not the clothing store either.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm quite proud of that one, actually.
You
know, we never had a hot topic here in the UK. At least I don't think so.
Yeah, the 17-year-old beard is very upset about that.
I would
have been called Fringe.
I would have spent
instead.
so much money in Hot Topic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Little scene kids.
Yeah, good times.
I miss the scene.
Good
I miss the scene.
Yeah. Anyway, the FAQ has dropped for the Adeptus Mechanicus, and we are going to discuss whether or not that's been enough, because they are crushing their opponents under their boots for the most part on the old tournament circuit. So there's been some changes made by Games Workshop to try and address those issues, but we are going to figure out whether or not that's going to do anything to the meta.
We will discuss later. First, we're going to have a quick run through and thoughts on the FAQ changes. I'm fairly sure that most of you have probably read it already, but this is just for posterity's sake. For those of you that are kind of just joining, for those of you that are dipping your toe, like going boop, into the competitive scene, let's talk changes. Basically, there was 5 changes.
Yes.
3 changes to stratagems, 1 change, well, effectively 2 changes to 2 units, but they're all under one sort of umbrella in terms of keywords, and a change to a dogma. So they're orders, they're chapter tactics, if you will. So let's start with that one, because it affected Lucius, because everyone's running Lucius.
Yes.
Because Lucius is really good.
Yes.
Plus 3 inch range, it's quite nice. Plus 1 armor save against damage 1 weapons, that's also very nice. Given the amount of damage 1 weapons out there, and given the amount of other pluses to your saves that you can make. That now no longer applies if you have light cover. It's an okay change.
It's fine.
I don't know whether it is enough. And here's the thing, it doesn't work if you have light cover. Cool, in melee, you'll still get it.
Yeah.
And you can still very easily get a 2-up save on your 8-point infantry.
Yeah.
Which is just a bit... I personally think it should have been like the Salamanders, you ignore AP1, or like the Sisters version of that now, which seems to be getting better in terms of power and sneaking along, or creep as it might be called, which is on AP1 and AP2 weaponry, you reduce it by 1.
Yeah.
That would still then enable you to gain the benefit of light cover and your bulwark stratagem and this and that against your damage 1. I wouldn't even have it against just damage 1. I would just have it as a blanket. You reduce AP1 and 2 by 1.
Yeah.
So AP1 becomes 0, AP2 becomes 1.
Yeah.
You'll still have a 4-up save. And then you can be in light cover and you can be in your bulwark doctrine.
And look, I think that's still pretty reasonable for a basic troops unit.
What, to have a 2-up save in cover with an army-wide rule?
No, like just changing it to the AP.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. So then against AP0, fine, you still get your 2-up saves. That's once per game now, rather than it being very often. Against AP1, fine, it's still the same. Against AP2, it's now a 3-up save. When you're out in the open, all of a sudden you're getting more. That's how I would have done it. I think it still kind of works, but it's when you get stuff in combat and you go, oh, I still have a 3-up save in combat against certain things.
Yep.
I still have a 4-up save in combat against certain things. It not working with the light cover, fine. I think just ignoring a point of AP would have been the better solution, because then you start going, great. And then it also doesn't stack with the Artisan's ability, which allows you to, you pick a unit and you go, you ignore AP1 and 2 outright.
Yep.
That way, because therein lies one of the other issues, is you go, here's my 2-up save, and now I don't care about AP1 and 2.
Yep.
This would mean you can pick that on a unit to make them just outright ignore the AP2, but realistically, you're not getting a stacking benefit from it. And that is the main problem, is the stacking benefit. Is the change good? Yes, of course it is. Is it enough of a change? I don't think so. I don't think so.
I agree. It's not enough.
No.
It's not enough. It's a little a step in the right direction, I suppose, but it's just a drop in the ocean, really, with all the other stuff that's going on.
Yeah. What's the next one, Ben?
The next one is the changes to acquisition at any cost.
Yes, a much needed change, in my opinion. So previously, this affected every unit within 6 inches of an objective, auto pass morale for 1 CP. Why they got a multiple auto pass morale for half the cost all the time
Only the Omnius Slayer knows that.
was dumb.
Yeah.
Now it's wholly within 6, which it doesn't completely limit your movement, but it limits your movement far more because you now can't string out. You want to auto pass that unit of 10. Are they all wholly within that objective? Nope, then tough. And it's also once per game, as it always should have been. This is an amazing change. This is a very good change because you now you do not have the ability to just fall back on going, I lost 10 and I'm in a leadership. I don't care, I pass. You now have to think about when you're going to use it. You have to position a bit better. It's still an amazing stratagem. To be able to auto pass multiple units for 1 CP is phenomenal, but it is no longer a sort of that clutch fallback. It's now what it should be, which is I have to use this now because it's a really key moment, not just I'll just do it.
And the name's entitled acquisition at any cost, and the cost is you can do it once.
Yeah, therein lies your cost. So yeah, that is a big change and a very good change because it does remove it gives back a weakness to the sort of the Ad Mech sort of styles that you were seeing, which was, well, I've got loads of models and I'm ignoring like a bunch of rules and I get to do a bunch of stuff and I also don't care about morale. You now have to care about morale a bit more.
Yeah.
And incidentally, that will help you clear those Ad Mech style lists that you're, those Horde style lists especially, and other types of Ad Mech lists that you're seeing, which just kind of go, here's a bunch of bodies. Now you go, well, I can kill those bodies and also kill some from morale. You're not killing a huge amount,
some
realistically, but every sort of 2 or 3 that you manage to get through extra is great. So yeah, that is a good change.
It all helps. Enriched Rounds is the next one that's changed. So with this one, they have increased the CP cost if you have 11 or more models in the unit. And they've also changed the wording. So your rifles are now heavy 3 rather than rapid fire 2.
Oh, that's Galvanic volley fire.
Yes.
So Enriched Rounds, you got the first bit you got right. So it goes to 2 CP on 11 or more, but Enriched Rounds is the one that affects the Vanguard, so they're 6s to hit.
Oh yeah, I've combined 2 things into one.
Combine it and merge it and create one super stratagem, which Ad Mech do not need. So now it triggers on 5s rather than 6s. Previously, it was 4s, and it was 1 CP, regardless of your side. Again, another really good change. And it's like a double whammy, this one. Whammy! So this punishes, quote unquote, your bigger hordes. It's not really a punishment because this is a trend that has been happening in multiple books, which is the bigger your units, the more benefits you're going to get from a stratagem, right? So it should cost you more to do. That's called sense. In addition, going from a 6 to a 5 is a much more linear progression, and again follows the trend of certain things, even in the same book of their taser protocols, which makes their taser explode on 6s into 5s rather than going from 6 to 4 and just skip the 5.
Yeah,
it didn't make any sense why it was released like that, but balance has been restored and fine. Well, I say balance, I'm talking the spiritual balance in terms of game design rather than balance of the game itself. We'll get to that later. Yeah, another really good change. It's still a really good stratagem.
Yes.
The return of investment on it is phenomenal because of the cost of the Vanguard. That's kind of why. I mean, even if you've got a full unit of 20, that's still 60 shots. I'll spend 2 CP. I'm still going to basically auto wound with 20 of those shots.
Yes.
Which will be at -1 because I've got a character to buff them nearby. Okay. That's still going to inflict against Space Marines 10 wounds. I'm still going to kill 5 Space Marines for it, which is nearly as much. And this is before I've even rolled to wound myself, as well as reroll ones to hit and all that sort of stuff. So my return of investment on it's pretty good. It's still going to cause absolute havoc to things like your Primarchs or things like Ghazghkull, Tyranids, monsters, like, any of those sorts of things will still fear it, but it is just a bit reined in. Another good change. The Galvanic Volley fire, which is what you were getting confused with, has gone from making them rapid fire to, I think that stayed the same CP. That's still 2 CP.
Yeah, the one you just mentioned is 1/2.
1/2 or 2/1, depending on what way around you want to read it. So that changed from rapid fire 2 to heavy 3. This is an interesting one because it effectively makes you better at longer ranges.
Yeah.
But it's not as effective when you get in half range. And the thing is, you were getting half range at like 18 to 19 inches, depending if you were Lucius or not, which, given the smaller board sizes, was very easy to do. And because it was rapid fire, you then ignore the heavy penalty. Now, there's ways of ignoring like the heavy weapons penalty still in the book, so it's not that big of a deal if you wanted to move and then you get your extra shot. But this isn't necessarily like a nerf or a rebalancing. It's just kind of this is almost like a total change of the stratagem itself in terms of what it does. It's a better change, I think, because you are losing shots at half range and you are forcing yourself to kind of either hit worse if you've moved, stay where you are, or use abilities on them to sort of make them ignore the -1 for moving and shooting, or be in a particular type of dogma. I think Metallica allows them to move and shoot heavy weapons without a penalty. Is it a good change? I mean, it's a change.
Yeah,
I don't know whether it's a good change in terms of
makes it a bit more situational rather than just like an obvious choice every shooting phase.
Yeah, I mean, it was still 2 CP before, so it maybe wasn't an every shooting phase type one, but it was that notion of going, here's my unit of 20, and I teleport across the battle, and we're talking Lucius, I teleport across the battlefield, and then I'm within a half range, and there's my 40 strength for probably AP 2 shots because of your manipulars, which was pretty, again, for 160 points, was a bit much. Oh, sorry, did I say 40? I meant 80, because it's rapid fire too. So now it's still 60 shots, but you'll be taking a -1 for doing so.
Yeah.
So
it's still very good.
It's still a really good stratagem. Yeah. It's just different. And then the final change is to your Ironstrider engines, so your Ballistari and your Sidonian Dragoons. Yep. They are no longer core. Good.
It's never been core.
Never should have been core. Didn't make any sense. Yeah. Now, I'm sure some people will argue, oh, but they're the Dreadnought equivalent. Dreadnoughts probably shouldn't have core either.
Yeah, maybe.
They probably shouldn't. The issue is when you've got one Dreadnought with core, and here's my plasma cannon or my onslaught Gatling cannon, I'm rerolling 1s to hit and 1s to wound. Fine.
Yeah.
The issue with the Ironstriders was they were probably hitting on 2s.
Yeah.
With D3+3 las cannons, rerolling 1s to hit and wound.
Yeah.
Which, again, you can do reroll 1s to hit and wound on a Dreadnought, but it's on one Dreadnought.
Yes.
Maybe 3 if you've got 3 of them around a character. Not 10, 20 las cannons, or 60 autocannon shots, or whatever your flavor of Ballistari was. I think the Dragoons suffer a little bit from the change because they weren't being seen anyway. I think they're just a bit too expensive. But this is a good change because it kind of makes you need to do something different other than just, I'm going to castle up with my core and hit with everything, basically, and wound with pretty much everything and just delete what they look at. Now they can operate a little bit more independently. They're still Scutari, so they still benefit from like the +1 ballistic skill or the +1 save, your dogmas. Like they're still getting a load of benefits. It's just you're not able to stack on a bunch of defensive benefits either. So things like you can only wound them on 4s with Lucius.
Yeah.
Or ignore AP 1 and 2.
Yeah, they're not getting more than they deserve at their points costs.
Yes.
They're already very, very very accurate, and the las is tasty.
Yeah,
so
D3+3.
Yeah, it's an unnecessary extra thing that they didn't need.
Yeah.
So I think this brings them a bit more back in line what they should be.
Yes. So those are the changes. We'll be back in a moment to discuss, I mean, we've talked about the individual changes, but we'll talk a bit more esoteric and wider ranging in the meta in general in just a moment.
So we've covered the 5 changes. The question is, Is that enough to bring them in line? Or are we going to continue to see world domination in the tournament circuit?
You're still going to see them everywhere, guys.
No, of course. It's very, very minor changes.
They're very minor. Okay. I don't want to see them go heavy-handed. I would rather they do this kind of soft touch approach and kind of change this here, change that there, like revisit it every, sort of like month or two, change it again, tweak it. The problem is, because let's use 8th edition Iron Hands, for example. They took like 3 or 4 changes before they were brought in line. But by the time that they were brought in line, they were actually nerfed so hard to the ground that they weren't anywhere ever again.
Yeah.
And this is the issue of this kind of approach, is it's almost too soft. And the problem is it's by the time another balance pass comes around, or another change comes around, or another FAQ comes around, something else has already changed, or people have adapted, or stuff has occurred that will change it up naturally. So at time of filming, recent tournament information that was occurring mostly in the States, Ad Mech only won a single GT. But there was one GT where they made up 4 of the top 5 places. And as a whole, across everyone using it, they had a 77% win rate.
That's good numbers. The stonks, that is. Yeah.
For reference, everyone, chess, which is generally considered the most balanced, game in the world, has a 53 to 55% win rate if you're playing white, and that's because white goes first.
Right.
That's the kind of numbers that we should ideally be aiming for. Even 60%, I'd be kind of like, okay, I can kind of live with this. Like, when you've got an army with a 7, like nearly winning 3 out of 4 games, and yes, and this is always the thing, that you're talking about these kinds of armies, and you're talking about very good players.
Yeah. And
what do very good players do in the tournament scene? They use the best armies. Now, Ad Mech are a bit of a weird one because they're so expensive, like in terms of cost, not in terms of points.
Oh, I
think one chicken's like 30 quid.
I feel bad for anyone that's bought a load of Dragoons or Ironstriders. They're so expensive.
They're so expensive. They're very expensive.
Yeah, if anyone's been chasing that meta.
So they're in a bit of a weird spot, but it's similar numbers as Drukhari. And Drukhari are a very similar thing. And herein lies the issue with them. They are far too cheap for what they do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can change the stratagems, you can change the rules. But when a individual model is 8 points, but can do everything that a 20-point model can do better in terms of offensive. Defensive doesn't matter if your opponent's dead.
Yep.
Let's take another unit, for example, the Raiders. The ones on with the guns on the doggos, the Greyhound horse dogs. They're 16 points. They're 4 points cheaper than an intercessor for sniper, mortal wounds, the same toughness, but an extra wound, a 4-up save, which you can bump up to a 2-up quite easily if you're running Lucius, or even a 3-up easily if you're running anyone else. Scout move. And their gun is equivalent to a bolt gun.
Yeah.
Oh, but they're not as good in combat. You don't care. Yeah. You're not going into combat with them.
Rangers at 8 points.
Rangers at 8 points. Vanguard are 8 points.
Gretchen at 5.
3
points more expensive than the Gret.
An Orc boy is 9. Like, it's just... The problem is they're too cheap. And herein, again, with that issue of like the meta changes very quickly. Unfortunately, Games Workshop is not quick enough. By the time that these guys will get a points change, it's going to be the next Munitorum field manual, and it will probably be too late.
Yeah. Because
people will be so annoyed with the meta that they're not playing anymore, or it will just be too little too late, or it's going to be an over fix.
Yeah.
They are pointed so cheaply for what they have access to. The access to the rules that they have and all the stacking abilities and all this and that rule 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 and that rule. It's all too much for their cost. Even if you made them 9 points, your standard list needs to find an extra 60 points, which isn't an insignificant amount. And that's the sort of thing where if you want to do those sorts of slow, gradual changes and the soft touch changes, they need to be consistent. they need to be monthly, and they need to go along with points.
Yeah.
The problem is that we're getting points changes every 6 months. This almost feels like an experiment of how much can we change without changing stats, without changing points, because we know that we're going to release a Munitor and Field Manual somewhere down the line and change the points in that.
Yep.
The problem with that is if we're only getting 1 a year or 2 a year or whenever it may be, and you have to pay money for the privilege of it, that is not good enough.
Yeah.
That it needs to be a monthly or a bi-monthly change, and it needs to be consistently changed. It's almost like they need to do a full digital living rule set, like we've been saying for years.
It would make this process far easier. Looking through, if I was a new player picking up that Ad Mech book, and I wasn't like that into this hobby just yet, and I'm going through, I'd have no idea that anything's changed. No idea at all. And I think 9th edition has definitely made 40k more of a competitively focused game. And unless you can bring in balance quickly, without having to wait 6 months to catch up, you're going to be falling behind all of the time.
Yep.
So I think that there's definitely been a conscious decision to move the non-Crusade games into a competitive setting, but without the constant updates like you get in a video game, for instance, like a digital patch or whatever to fix balance.
Balance patch happens when you log in.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah. Without that and with physical books, I don't see how they're ever going to catch up.
Yeah. The physical book system, and don't get me wrong, I love physical books. It's so much easier to look for a book than it is to scroll through PDF.
Yes. Agreed.
Like, don't get me wrong. However, there needs to be a conscious decision as to what they want the game to be. Mm-hmm. Let's say you make your Rangers 12 points, like some people are saying. Well, that's going to affect people that aren't playing competitively. Now, there's nothing wrong with trying to make the game as balanced as possible.
Yeah.
It should be. The game should be as balanced as possible at all times, whether you're playing competitively or non-competitively. And this is where a living rule set would help everyone, because then you could have multiple updates happening all the time, constantly, and you would see them live in the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
Or on your computer.
Yeah.
Or on a tablet. You know, it would just, and it would make the game a lot easier. And then if someone wants to buy a Codex and not worry about keeping up to date with the competitive scene, and you go, this is the 2023 season, here's the points.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm not playing competitive play. Just use the points in the Codex.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
It makes sense. It does make sense.
I don't know. What do you guys think? Would that be a way to do it? I don't know.
We've seen lots of issues with physical media in the last couple of years in terms of manufacture and availability and things like that. So if you've got to make these books, design them, print them, and then do adjustments afterwards, all this takes so much time.
Then they get stuck in the Suez Canal.
Exactly. You know, if you had it all digital, yes, it's not a physical, lovely physical book, but all the stuff's updated all the time, and you've not got to essentially guess. What's changed in your physical book? Because unless you're really into it and you're on the Games Workshop website regularly and you're in that FAQ section,
I can guarantee you that there are people watching this, and you may comment, you may not comment, you may never comment, you may always comment. I don't know. And they'll probably be like, oh, I didn't realize there was an FAQ. Because they're not following Games Workshop on social media. They're not following the competitive Reddits and Facebook groups and forums because they don't care. All they do, they've got Ad Mech because they're like, oh yeah, steampunk Da Vinci robots, that's really cool. And they're playing it in their friend's garage or down the friendly local gaming store or with their younger son or with their brother or with their sister or whoever it is that they're playing with. And they're just having fun with the game. And that is perfectly fine, just as it's perfectly fine to play competitively. But the competitive scene needs the balance, otherwise it dies and it stagnates and we end up seeing 77% win rates from 2 armies and other armies just going, they're not being used. If Games Workshop just decided to release all the codexes that are ready to be printed, all the codexes that are at the printing press right now, put them on pre-order. And when you pre-order it, you'll get sent your digital code. And you can start using the Codex immediately. And you'll get your printed version in 8 months' time, or 6 months' time, or whenever it gets printed and it gets shipped. But then that would give us so much more in terms of 9th edition balance, because you'd have a lot more codexes out there. And then we could see whether those changes that are going to be wrought from new codexes coming out are going to have an impact or not. By releasing the stuff now and having a living digital rule set that's updated every month or two, if you want to follow the scene, you've got the updates, because everyone is giving that feedback, everyone is collating it. That is not what we're seeing right now. So what we have at the moment is kind of what we have to deal with. Will the meta change drastically as a result of this FAQ? No. It's not going to change.
Hell no.
I can't see it changing. Ad Mech is still going to be very strong. They aren't undefeatable. They aren't undefeatable. Drukhari are not undefeatable, but they're both very good armies, and they're kind of so far above the other codexes that they need a much bigger overhaul than they have received. When or if they will receive those overhauls, I do not know, but they need it.
I feel like it will not be quick.
No.
But based on the FAQ, like yes, they've changed some stuff and addressed some issues, but not to any kind of degree that is really going to significantly change the way they play. It's not going to make me feel like I'm having any more fun playing against Ad Mech, because to be honest, it's not very fun. They're a very oppressive army to play against. And I think that is a big indication that what's been done so far hasn't really worked.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, and we've sort of mentioned this before, and again, for those of you that weren't here during the dark days of 5th edition and 6th edition, this is so much better than it was. Like, we went years without FAQs. Literal 2 to 3 years without an FAQ for codexes. This codex was broken. Yep, well, I mean, that's tough. Yeah, you're gonna live with it for the next 2 to 3 years. Oh, okay. It's been 8 weeks. I'm sure for a lot of you in the competitive scene, that is a long 8 weeks. However, it's still better than it was, but there's still a long way to go, in my opinion. And yeah, I'm gonna beat the dead horse. We need a full digital rule set.
Yeah.
It needs to be fully digitized. It needs to be fully digital. It needs to be updated regularly, not every 6 months or every 12 months with points that are, because, and this is the other issue with like the Munitorum manual and stuff, because it's printed, right? Lead time on printing stuff is like 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
It's being printed long before the changes need to happen.
Yep.
And it's not coming out until long after the changes needed to happen. So it's too little, it's too late, and it's not enough.
Yeah, I'd love to know a breakthrough, because Games Workshop are doing very well financially recently.
Yes.
They've had another really good quarter for their earnings. I'd love to know how much income they're generating from books. I'm guessing it is a significant amount.
It has to be a significant amount, because otherwise it should have been not canned off, because as I say, I like the books, but they should have realistically multiple ways of doing it.
Yeah.
They should have, a codex should be essentially in 2 parts. You should have, you can call it a codex, and that gives you all your rules, because that fits with the theme of, like the way of fighting war, right? And it's literally just the rules, and you can get that in physical format, or you can get that in a digital format, although predominantly you should be getting that in a digital format, because that should be updated constantly. The second half of it is a nice 100-page book of art and fluff, and you can call that something else.
Yeah.
And then you can buy the 2 together as like a box set.
Yeah, or a physical book.
You buy the 2 together. You go like, oh, this lore and art and artwork book, and loads of nice pictures and beautiful artwork, because, the books themselves are laying out very nicely.
Oh, man,
They're very pretty.
This one especially.
It's gorgeous.
This is amazing.
The artwork's fantastic.
Yeah, crushed it.
You know, and some real nice, but then you can go, right, well, you can have more lore, like diagrams of weapons, like really go into that, you know, like lovely artwork, loads of nice photos, and have it as this kind of source and fluff reference book.
Yeah, and the other thing, to a point you made earlier on, if you just had a digital version of the rules, which is...
It doesn't invalidate your art book.
But also, in terms of being able to navigate that digital format, if you're searching for a particular word, you'll probably find in the rules is also in this part of the book as well. So you're making your search criteria larger, which means it's then harder to navigate the book. If you just had the rules in a digital format, it would make it much easier to go through as well.
And you go, cool, here's your art book, and it's £25 or whatever, or $25 or $195 Australian, because I feel for you guys so much.
Yeah, so.
And then your rules are 10. You buy them together and it's 30, so you get a £5 discount because you bought them together. But if you only want the rules, it's £10.
Yeah.
If you just want the art, whatever. Like, you know, there's lots of ways that they could do it. But I'm with you. I'd love to see the real nitty gritty on the financials and sort of see how much they make off of certain things, because there has to be a reason as to why they've stuck with this format for so long. It clearly makes them money. Yeah. It clearly works for them. Does it work for us as the consumer? It depends, honestly. For the layman, who is the majority, great. It's perfectly fine for them. For the person that wants to play the game competitively or follows the scene or is looking for a balanced game, some has got to change. Yeah, and the other thing is that you can add DLC. So when this inevitably gets a day one DLC. Yeah, well, when you get your supplement come up for this in the future, it's just added on. Just a couple of quid, and then you can add that into your digital. It seems like a very obvious thing to do as well. Yeah. Like, and it's 2021, and we're not saying anything that other people haven't been saying for ages. This isn't a radical, a radical suggestion at all. This isn't something that, you know, is new for us either. We've been talking about going digital for years. Yeah. There is no reason for the current format, if they want to make it a competitive, a truly competitive balance game, and if a lot of the competitive community want to see it become this big esports style competitive big scene thing, which I think would be really cool to see. That's a topic for another time, but it is something that needs a big change. Yeah. So look, because of the release schedule, the meta, and because of the way that it's done, despite these overall very positive changes to the Ad Mech book, it's not going to be enough, and it's not going to happen quick enough for that meta to change, in my opinion, at least. I agree. In summary, I agree. In summary, agreed. I think we all agree. Agree stamp. Well, we'll have to see if more changes come in the future. Like you said before, Minotaur Manual will come around eventually, and we'll have to see if the continued win rate will keep up at its current rate. If it does, I do foresee some more changes coming, but... Well, they'll have to. They'll have to, because it's just not healthy for the game as a whole otherwise. Yeah, it remains to be seen. Well, let us know your thoughts down below. What do you think? What do you think should change? Should we start our digital publishing company? All these questions and more will be answered in the next exciting episode of Us. I've been the Beard, he's been the Chef, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.